All right, welcome to the ninth edition of Before the Battle. As always, I'm your host, Nick Baldwin, and joining me on the panel, as always, is the man behind BestFightPicks.com. Please welcome Daniel Levy back to Before the Battle. Daniel, how's it going, man?
It's going awesome. Just stoked to be back on here and talking about my favorite sport in the world.
For sure, and joining me also on the panel, as always, is the man who is a writer for Vendetta Fighter. He's a writer for Today's Knockout, but most recently, Go Paulo has decided to go big or go home, hence his name, Go Paulo, and he's now writing for the biggest website on planet Earth. It gets more web views than Google, Yahoo, and Bing all combined in a year. It gets more web views in a minute than that. Go Paulo is now a writer for Sportsnet.ca. Paulo, now how's it going? And let us know how your new job with Sportsnet.ca came about.
Hey Nick. Well, thanks for that hyperbolic introduction. It's pretty cool. So it started out when I met James Lynch on Twitter, and then I found out that he was writing for Sportsnet. So I asked James Lynch, I'm like, how do I start writing for Sportsnet? And he's like, you should get in touch with Mike Johnston. So I messaged Mike Johnston because I work for Rogers, actually. I shouldn't leave that part out. And then I saw him on the mailing list, and so I emailed him and like, hey Mike, I'd really like to contribute to the MMA, to the UFC section of Sportsnet. And he's like, yeah, sure. Let me just run it through my editor, and we'll see if we can get you in. And then a couple of weeks came in, and we had to like get through the red tape and whatever else we had to fill in, and yeah, the rest is history. He said, do you want to do a piece on UFC 191? So I did it.
And I assume, I know it's only been a couple days and everything, but I assume you're getting more recognition on the street, correct?
Well, we'll have to see about that.
It'll take a month or so, and then you'll get some fans. Believe me, within a year, people will ask you for your autograph within a year or so. Believe me. Take my word on that. All right.
Sure.
This is called Before the Battle, but obviously we don't talk about. There was no UFC card this past weekend. The last card was Saskatoon, which we went through last week, of course. So we're going to go through some news before we get to UFC 191. So let's start off with a pivotal featherweight matchup that was recently announced, Max Holloway versus Jeremy Stephens for UFC 194. Now, this is one matchup that I was expecting after Frankie Edgar was set to take on Chad Mendes, which we'll get to after this. Personally, I felt Max Holloway deserved the Edgar fight in a number one contenders matchup, of course. They decided to give Chad Mendes that fight, and this is the second best option, of course. Now, Daniel, what are your thoughts on the matchup, and can we get an early pick from you?
I also would have liked to see Max Holloway versus Frankie Edgar for that number one contender spot, but I'll tell you what, there's an interesting backstory here between Max Holloway and Jeremy Stephens. Back in the day, when Jeremy Stephens was going to fight Anthony Pettis, he brought in an 18-year-old Max Holloway to live at his house and help him train and mimic Anthony Showtime Pettis. So they're good friends, and they're going to meet inside the octagon. Who said that good friends can't compete against each other? And my pick is going to be Max Blessed Holloway.
And Paulo, what about you? What are your thoughts on this matchup, and what's your early pick?
No, this is going to be a great fight. As we know, good friends can make exciting battles with Andrei Arlovski and Travis Brown, which is arguably the best round ever in UFC history. So maybe we're going to get the same thing with Max Holloway and Jeremy Stephens. Early pick right now, Max Holloway, man. I mean, Max Holloway, I don't want to do MMA math here, but Max Holloway really tooled Cub Swanson, and Cub Swanson outstruck Jeremy Stephens. I think Cub Swanson's a more technical striker than Stephens, and I think Holloway's going to do the same. Barring getting caught with a knockout, like Stephens is capable of, I think he wins decision.
All right, and I definitely am siding with the Max Holloway here. Could even sink in a late guillotine or something like that. Obviously, Charles Oliveira couldn't even submit Jeremy Stephens, who is a very tough fighter. So probably decision would be the way to go. But definitely in favor of Max Holloway. He's really just all-around the better fighter. And like Paul pointed out, MMA math, if ever, it barely works. But just look at this. Max Holloway beat Oliveira and Cub Swanson, and dominated Cub Swanson, that is, and Jeremy Stephens lost to both of them. And So that does say something. MMA math doesn't work at all, and but I don't know. I really think Max Holloway's on another level than Jeremy Stephens, and he probably picks up a dominant decision. So like I said just a few moments ago, Frankie Edgar, Chad Mendes headlines the Tough 22 finale just the night before UFC 194. So Daniel, who do you like in this matchup, Chad Mendes or Frankie the Answer Edgar?
You know I got to go with Frankie the Answer Edgar. I mean, Chad Mendes, obviously, he's got the chance to knock out anyone he faces, and especially in that first round. But when you talk about a guy like Frankie Edgar, first of all, he's never been knocked out. He's got that championship experience. He's the former lightweight champ. This is a guy that could fight at bantamweight, and he's the former lightweight champ. And now he's going up against a guy who is 0-3 in his title shots. He's fighting a former champ here. It's not going to go well for him. Not to mention that, Chad Mendes, he's had some cardio issues before, not just the Conor fight, but the Nick Lenz fight. And, a lot of people like to make excuses. Oh, he had the flu. Oh, he took the fight on 3 weeks' notice. Well, let me tell you something here right now on Before the Battle. Have you ever heard Frankie Edgar make an excuse? Did he make an excuse about getting upkicked by Benson? He wasn't like, oh, I had the flu, so I got upkicked. You've never heard Frankie Edgar make an excuse, win or lose. With Chad Mendes, there's a laundry list of excuses. I'm going with the guy that's a champion, and that's Frankie Edgar.
And Paulo, what about you, Frankie Edgar or Chad Money Mendes?
I'm going to have to dissent here. As much as I love Frankie, I think I would pick Mendes here. I think it's not a good matchup for Frankie. Over the course of the 5-rounder, I'd pick Frankie, but I don't think it gets to 5 rounds. I think Mendes is a good chance to finish Frankie. Now, of course, I haven't really extensively done studying yet, so my pick might change down the road. But right now, I might side with Chad Money Mendes to get it done within the distance.
I agree with the Go Paulo here. Other than the fact that Chad Mendes stops Frankie Edgar, I don't think Edgar will be stopped. He's a very, very tough fighter and whatnot. Chad Mendes has, of course, improved his striking over the years, so could get that win over Frankie Edgar, or that finish over Frankie Edgar. But in my opinion, he gets the win, but not a stoppage. Chad Mendes, yes, he's 0-3 in title fights. He's coming off a TKO loss to Conor McGregor, the interim title holder. Frankie Edgar coming in on momentum, riding, I believe, a 4-fight winning streak with wins over Uriah Faber, Chad Mendes' training partner. But Chad Mendes, I just think, is a bit better everywhere. He's younger, I believe. He's a better athlete. And Daniel mentioned his cardio issues, and yes, he did not look good in the Conor McGregor matchup. We all know that, but we all know that he took the fight on short notice, really short notice, like a week or two. So it does make sense that his cardio wouldn't be as good in that matchup. So for that reason, I think if we see 100% Chad Mendes here, I think he gets it done. But if he gasses or doesn't look himself, Frankie Edgar could definitely get it done, probably by decision. One last fight announcement, that is. We have Miesha Tate and Amanda Nunes. According to Combat, they have verbally agreed to a matchup in December. So that'll be either the Tough finale on December 11th, either the UFC 194 pay-per-view card on the 12th, or UFC on Fox. That is 17, I want to say, just a week after that. Now, Daniel, let's go to you. Who do you like in that matchup? And overall, just your thoughts on the fight, because to me, it may not be the best move the UFC could have made.
I mean, it's a good fight, and, it's funny because I've been picking against Miesha Tate lately, but she's been getting way, way better. But I'm going to pick against her again here. I'm going to go with Amanda Nunes via some kind of finish inside the distance.
And, Paulo, your thoughts on the fight, and can we get an early pick from you?
Yeah, I'm going to side with Daniel here again. I'm going to continue fading Miesha Tate. I think Amanda Nunes is going to beat her up and get the win. The thing is, Nunes doesn't have as bad of a chin or suspect of a chin as I, and she's a lot feistier than I, and she has a better ground game than I. So I think she's better equipped to deal with Tate here.
I really like. I'm not a fan of this matchup. First off, matchup-wise, this could be a good fight and everything, but these are the two top contenders as far as I'm concerned at women's bantamweight, other than Ronda Rousey, of course. Both these girls deserve title shots. They've earned title shots. obviously with Miesha Tate, like you guys mentioned, coming off that win over Jessica Ai, who was at that time ranked number 5 or so. Amanda Nunes is coming off a top 5 win over Sarah McMahon. Both of these fighters deserve title shots, and both of them should be getting them in the future. But now with this matchup, only one will be. And the reason this matchup is going to be made is because Holly Holm is fighting Ronda Rousey for the title, which, yes, you can advertise how, you can market how Holly Holm is the former pro boxer and all that, all her boxing credentials, but it's simple. She has not looked good in the UFC. She decision for Aquel Pennington and Marion Renault, didn't look good in either of them. So right off the bat, Ronda Rousey, Holly Holm screws things up because that's not a good matchup. It should have been Rousey, Tate, and maybe even Amanda Nunes versus Holly Holm, but the matches are set. As far as the matchup, I don't know. I often pick both of these fighters in all of their fights. I don't fade either of them too often, so it kind of is disappointing to me that I have to fade one of them, and I have to pick Miesha Tate here. She's just better, more well-rounded than Amanda Nunes. Obviously, Nunes has a knockout power, of course, but Miesha Tate probably just grinds her out and earns her second title shot against Ronda Rousey in the UFC. But early pick Tate, but who knows by the time the fight happens. All right, before we get to UFC 191, one last thing we want to talk about is Conor McGregor recently appeared on UFC Tonight with Uriah Faber. Both of them are coming off coaching Tough 22, which will air next week, I believe. Conor McGregor had some things to say about TJ Dillashaw. Let's say that on UFC Tonight. He basically was saying in front of Uriah Faber's face that TJ Dillashaw is going to be a traitor towards Team Alpha Male. He's going to eventually leave TAM, one of the best gyms in the world, one of the best MMA gyms, and go to Dwayne Ludwig's new gym over in Colorado. And we all know that TJ Dillashaw and Dwayne Ludwig share something special. Ludwig was the one that made TJ Dillashaw to be the champion that he is today. But Team Alpha Male also deserves a fair bit of that credit as well, giving TJ the best training partners, all that stuff. And Conor McGregor basically said TJ Dillashaw, within a matter of years, will leave Team Alpha Male and basically be a traitor. Now, Daniel, before we get to your opinion on this, just what are your thoughts on Conor McGregor saying that and in front of Uriah Faber?
Well, first of all, we all know that Conor McGregor is an entertainer, and what he said last night on UFC Tonight was funny, it was entertaining, and I guarantee that anyone that started watching that interview didn't turn off their TV until the end, because, I mean, that had me glued, man. It was some must-see TV. But as far as his comments regarding TJ Dillashaw, you know, I don't view TJ Dillashaw as a traitor at all. I think that this is an individual sport, and you have to do what's best for your career. And obviously what's best for his career is training with Dwayne Bang Ludwig, because, you know, he won the title. He's made 2 title defenses, and if he feels he's going to evolve better training with Dwayne, then I think he should do what's best for his career.
And Paulo, what about you?
Yeah, you know what? It's really not in our place or anyone's place to say that TJ is going to betray, Team Alpha Male. But the thing is, there's a little bit of a beef going on between Faber and Ludwig, or at least they've traded shots at each other. I'm not really close to the situation, so I can't really say what their relationship is right now. And the thing is, TJ Dillashaw is sort of like in the middle of that, because he's both a Ludwig guy and he's both a Team Alpha Male guy. So I think what McGregor is getting at is that, can you really trust this guy? This guy's close to Ludwig, who you just had some pretty bad things to say about. I think Bloody Elbow reported somewhere that Uriah Faber said that Ludwig was a drama queen, or was it the other way around? But I know that there's been stories about jabs that they've been throwing at each other, so who knows, really. McGregor could just be talking shit entirely too. Who knows? We all know Conor McGregor says a lot of things to rile people up.
That's exactly it. Conor McGregor is most likely just talking trash to make Uriah Faber think about things and whatnot, think about his relationship with TJ Dillashaw. But he does say a fair number of true things. He always talks the talk, and no one thinks he'll walk the walk, but he ends up doing so. We see that against Dennis Seaver, Chad Mendes, Dustin Poirier, and so on. And this guy does state facts, simply put, but I don't know if he is in this scenario. Obviously, none of us are close to the situation in Team Alpha Male. None of us know the relationship between Uriah Faber and TJ Dillashaw. In public, they seem to be good friends. Definitely, show that they're teammates and whatnot. We don't know the relationship between Duane Ludwig and Uriah Faber. All we know is that TJ Dillashaw is really tight with Duane Ludwig and is really tight with Team Alpha Male. It all comes down to who's he tighter with, really. Does he want to stick around with Team Alpha Male, or does he want to stick around with Duane Ludwig more often? And really it doesn't affect any of us, but it is interesting because we have seen just through social media and whatnot, TJ Dillashaw has been heading over to Colorado to train with Duane Ludwig, his former coach, his current coach, but former Team Alpha Male coach, that is. So who really knows? I don't think he'll ever officially leave Team Alpha Male. I think he'll just continue what he's doing now, kind of splitting the time. Obviously, most of the time staying in Sacramento with Team Alpha Male, and then when it comes down to the last few weeks, the last bit of his training camp, go over to Colorado with guys like Danny Castillo, Joseph Benavidez, and so on to get in that last work with Duane Bang Ludwig. So that's really all I have to say about that. And we are called before the battle, hence that is why we are going to talk about UFC 191 now. And it's a fantastic card. Pay-per-view wise, it won't do well. I think everybody knows that. Demetrious Johnson doesn't sell, but he is one of the best fighters on this planet, if not the best. He is headlining this card versus John Dodson. But before we get to that, let's start out on the preliminary card. We'll start right in the middle with Francisco Rivera welcoming John Lineker to the bantamweight division for the very first time. Paulo, let's start with you. Who do you like in this matchup, Rivera or Lineker?
You know, when this matchup first started, I was so high on Rivera, and I was thinking, why is Rivera an underdog? He's totally going to school Lineker, and he's going to knock him out. Lineker's moving up a weight division. He won't have that extra weight advantage he has over the other flyweights who had to die to make weight, while he carried over that extra 2-3 pounds that he usually carries over. And he's a small guy. Let's be honest, he's 5'2". I think he's the shortest male fighter in the roster right now. He's even shorter than Mighty Mouse Johnson. And he's got short reach. So, like, if you look at those physical stats, you're like, oh man, this is a total mismatch. Cisco's gonna go through him. But that's not really the case, because Lineker is the more well-rounded fighter. He's definitely got the better Brazilian jiu-jitsu game, and Cisco is he does have some decent takedown defense. But if Lineker gets the fight to the ground, then it's gonna be real bad for Cisco. So I think if Cisco manages to keep this fight standing, he might be able to edge out Lineker. There's a good chance for a knockout finish from either one, but I don't think it's gonna happen. But I'm still gonna side with Cisco here. I've been backing this guy for a while now. I was so upset he didn't get the Faber loss overturned, because I really did think that should have been overturned. But I'm gonna go with Cisco here.
And Daniel, what about you? Who do you like in this matchup, Rivera or Lineker?
First of all, it's a really, really good fight. I'm going to go with John Lineker. I'm going to tell you why right now, Nick. You know, a lot of people are saying stuff like, oh, well, you know, Francisco Rivera is much taller, therefore he's going to pick apart John Lineker. And I just want to ask everyone that's saying that, I want to ask them something. When has Francisco Rivera ever picked anyone apart? The way this guy fights is he goes in there and he throws big bombs. He doesn't, you know, establish his jab and throw a nice straight cross. This guy swings looping haymakers. And with John Lineker, it's going to be interesting because he also throws looping haymakers, but he's a little bit more technical, and he's better in every single area of the game. You know, with Rivera, all he has is that knockout power, but he doesn't have a gas tank. He doesn't have a ground game. And if you saw Lineker's last fight against Ian McCall, he almost tapped him out on 2 separate occasions, and he got the better of the grappling exchanges. So what I think is going to happen is the height disadvantage is actually going to be an advantage for Lineker, because he's going to be landing to the body. And once he starts landing to that body, Francisco Rivera's guard's going to drop, and then Lineker's going to land a big shot to the face and knock him out. So I got John Hands of Stone Lineker reigning supreme in his bantamweight debut.
Unlike Sam Stout, John Lineker lives up to his nickname, Hands of Stone. This guy, when you watch tape and whatnot, this guy hits really freaking hard, and he is going to knock out Francisco Rivera. That's my official pick. But it could go to the ground, like Daniel said, and John Lineker has the advantage there as well. Both these guys are very hard hitters. John Lineker is probably the better striker, in my opinion. He probably has a bit more power. Moving up to bantamweight probably will help him. He even said he's never going back down to flyweight. That just shows he was cutting way too much weight. He still will be. I heard he was like right around 160 out of competition, and that is a lot to get down to 125, and it still is a fair bit going down to bantamweight. So the weight cut shouldn't be an issue. If it is, that'll be crazy. But John Lineker, if he goes in there 100% or even 80 or 90%, I think he gets the job done inside the distance. Moving on, we have the main event of the preliminary card, and this fight could either be a first-round knockout for either guy, or it could be one of the best fights we see all year. Paul Felder taking on Ross Pearson. Daniel, who do you like in this fight?
This is another great fight, and Ross Pearson, he always brings it. What he does really well is he'll roll under people's punches and then land a nice hook and knock you out. But the thing with him is that, man, he's a little bit battle worn. Even before his UFC days, if you go back and you watch his wars with Kurt Warburton, man, he was getting dropped hard there. And then in the UFC, he's been knocked out. He's been dropped a couple times. And when you talk about Paul Felder, this is one of the scariest strikers in the UFC 155-pound division. So I think it's wrong place at the wrong time for Ross Pearson. And I think Paul Felder is going to get the victory here.
And Paulo, what about you?
Yeah, I'm with Paul Felder here. Some people say that Paul Felder is having a short turnaround, so they're a little bit hesitant about that. But let's look at Ross Pearson's last fight, and I think they were only like 2 weeks apart. So this isn't really. So he's also having another shorter turnaround, and I think as Daniel mentioned, Pearson's been a little bit more worse than Felder. Felder's the fresher fighter, and as we've seen, Pearson has been knocked out a couple of times. His chin is fading as well. Like when he fought Sam Stout, I bet the under there because I thought that either one of them could knock each other out because they both had fading chins. Just so happened that Pearson caught Sam Stout first. And Stout is a really good counter striker. He's good at picking guys apart, but Felder's not a guy that's easy to pick apart because he's also very technical. I mean, he went toe-to-toe with Barboza, who is one of the best, most technical strikers out there, if not the most technical. And you know what? I think Felder's going to get the job done. He's going to catch Pearson at some point and knock him out, or if not, win the decision.
Yeah, I'm very confident in the Irish Dragon in this matchup. Ross Pearson does have lots of knockout power, like Paul Felder. But Ross Pearson, like Paulo mentioned, his chin is a bit suspect now. He obviously showed in the Ally Quinta bout that he can get knocked out, and he has in the past as well. His chin is not fantastic. Paul Felder is still new in this game. He's the fresher fighter. He's the better skilled fighter, and so that just leads to a win, and probably a big win for Paul Felder. I think he gets it done by TKO for sure, probably even in the first round, if not the second round probably. But of course, Paul Felder does have the gas tank to go 3 rounds. Ross Pearson does as well. Paul Felder, all around the better fighter, really could win this fight anywhere he wants, TKO, or he couldn't even go to decision. But official pick would have to be Paul Felder by TKO in the first round. Alright, the opening fight on the main card is a women's strawweight bout between Paige Vanzant and Alex Chambers. Daniel, who do you like here?
I like Paige Vanzant. I think that, it's funny, a lot of people are talking about how, she's too hyped and this and that. Yeah, well, first of all, she's really exciting. She finishes fights, and she's going to go out there and absolutely dominate Alex Chambers. So I have Paige Vanzant winning here inside the distance.
And, Paulo, what about you?
Okay, Paige Vanzant, I think the real question here, I got Paige Vanzant, but the real question here is, should Paige Vanzant be a minus 1,500 favorite? That's ridiculous. I've never seen anyone that big of a favorite. I don't think even GSP or Anderson Silva became that big of a favorite. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong if they did. Maybe GSP did against Matt Serra, but I think he was only minus 1,300 or something like that. So that's crazy. Those are Ronda Rousey numbers. And you know what? She's going to win this fight, though. She's such a beast. Like, she's not just hot, and that's not the reason that everyone's so hyped about her, because she's hot. I mean, she's also really good, and she's an exciting fighter. And Chambers' only shot here is to catch Vanzant when she makes a mistake. And you know what? I think that's plus 1,100 right now. If you're a gambling man like I am, throw a little bit of money on that. Crazier things have happened, but Paige Vanzant by domination.
Paige Vanzant is already a very good fighter, top 10 fighter in the women's strawweight division, but she isn't the level of Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Claudia Gadelha, and so on, she can make a mistake. And that, like Paulo said, that is only the way Alex Chambers will win this fight. A late round submission, a late round knockout, maybe Paige Vanzant leaves her chin open, all of a sudden gets caught in some lucky submission. But other than that, assuming that doesn't happen, because I don't really base my picks too often off of luck, off of just crazy things and whatnot, so I have to go with Paige Vanzant, probably even inside the distance, if not a dominant decision. But she is not worth Ronda Rousey odds. I'm sorry, only Ronda Rousey is worth Ronda Rousey odds. Paige VanZant, I've seen her at minus 2,000, and that is way too high. She should be a big favorite for sure. She should be like minus 600, minus 700, not minus 1,500 to minus 2,000. Like that is insane. And like Paul said, if you bet, it is worth putting a few dollars on Alex Chambers in case Paige VanZant makes a mistake. But I have to make a pick. Paige VanZant, in my opinion, will not make a mistake that'll cost her the fight and will win by TKO in the third round. All right, we have Corey Anderson taking on John Blachowicz, and in a light heavyweight bout, Daniel, who do you like in this matchup?
This is an interesting fight because with Corey Anderson, he does train with Mark Henry and Frankie Edgar, so he's got like that volume style to his striking. And with Yannick Blachowicz, he likes to sit back and kind of wait. He can be tentative at times. A lot of people watched his last fight with Jimi Manuwa, and they probably got the wrong impression because Jimi Manuwa completely shut down the striking attack of Jan Blachowicz. But Corey Anderson's not about to do that. Corey only has 6 pro fights, and there's too much of a experience mismatch here. So I'm going to go with Jan Blachowicz for the victory.
And Paulo, who are you siding in this matchup?
I'm going to side with Jan Blachowicz here. Thing is, one thing I noticed about Corey Anderson, and something that I regret not picking up on or not trusting my instinct on when he fought John Villante. I actually bet Anderson there, which is a bad bet. I parlayed him with Benny, and I lost that bet because Villante totally ate him up with leg kicks. He was not checking leg kicks at all. He was basically limping his way through the entire fight because Villante was just eating up his legs. And Blachowicz is like, this guy has a leg KO, man, TKO. I think he kicked someone through the body and killed them, or not killed them. No, Latifi, he did. He liver kicked Latifi and finished him off. Blachowicz has some very underrated leg kicks, and he could totally eat up Anderson's legs. And if you eat up Anderson's legs, he's not going to have that power to take Blachowicz down. So I think Blachowicz is going to, unless Anderson fixed that part of his game, which is really possible, but I'm not going to go on that hunch right there. I think this is Blachowicz's fight to lose.
Yeah, it is definitely a John Blachowicz's fight to lose, but Corey Anderson also does need a win here. Both coming off losses. Corey Anderson probably needs it a bit more. Other than his debut win over Matt Van Buren, who is one of the worst light heavyweights currently on the roster, and light heavyweight is one of the weakest divisions in the UFC. So if that says anything, then Corey Anderson will beat bad fighters or very low caliber fighters. He's not going to beat the best of the best, far from that. John Blachowicz, sure, he knocks out Ilir Latifi, but I haven't been high on him either. I am siding with the underdog here, Corey Anderson. The younger fighter, and I just don't see too many advantages for him, but somehow he's going to pull off the win by decision. He's just going to kind of grind out Jan Blachowicz and pick up the decision win. But this, in my opinion, is one of the closest fights on the entire card. It's 205, so Blachowicz could knock him out, Anderson could knock him out. Both have knockout power. Both can go to decisions as well. So I really don't know who to pick here, but if I have to pick, flip a coin, and it lands on Corey Anderson. All right, moving on, we have Anthony Rumble Johnson taking on Jimi Manuwa in a pivotal 205-pound matchup. Who do you like in this matchup, Daniel?
Most likely Anthony Rumble Johnson is going to get that first-round KO, but if he doesn't and it goes past the first round, the odds increasingly increase in Jimi Manuwa's favor because if you watch his last fight with Jan Blachowicz, like we were just talking about, his cardio was really good all 3 rounds, and apparently he had a broken foot. So if his cardio is that good with an injury, I can only imagine what it's like, at 100%. But the thing is, he's dealing with Anthony Rumble Johnson here. We all know if you get tagged by Anthony Rumble Johnson, chances are you're going down. Now, if you're someone like DC, you can go down and then get back up. Now, I'm not quite convinced that Jimi Manuwa is going to be able to recover, but I do know that he's a technical striker, and if he's going to win this fight, he's going to have to use his head movement. He's going to have to, pick his shots and try to take it to the later rounds, but I'm going to have to lean with Rumble here.
And, Paulo, do you like Rumble to get back into the winning column or Jimi Manuwa to extend his winning streak?
I'm picking Rumble here, and I'm putting him in a two-man parlay. I just wanted to actually ask, what happened to Jimi Manuwa's injured knee? Wasn't there like a report that he fought Blachowicz with a torn ACL and MCL?
I heard something like that too. I heard MCL for sure.
Yeah, I know. Okay.
That's how accurate the reports we're reading is.
Yeah.
Okay, hypothetically, if he had one of those three injuries or all of them, and he's fighting Rumble, he's a dead man. He's a sitting duck out there. His mobility is going to be hampered. He won't be able to throw knees and kicks as well. I mean, and Rumble's going to eat him up. Rumble, a lot of people, when they think of Rumble, he's this brawler guy who just wings punches and just basically tries to take your head off. The new Rumble has actually been a lot more calculated. He actually measures his opponents a lot better now. But so I think Blachowicz, Manuwa's in trouble here. But like Daniel said, anything can happen, and if it goes past the first round, might favor Manuwa.
Anybody not named John Jones or Daniel Cormier is in trouble when they sign the dotted line to fight Rumble Johnson. Now, this guy probably hits the hardest in the 205-pound division, and one of the hardest hitters in the entire promotion. This guy, I really am high on him. I picked him to become the champ against Cormier. Obviously, I was wrong there. I believe Daniel did as well. I'm not too sure about you, Paulo, but Rumble Johnson, this guy is a killer. He is very skilled. It's not just that he has big knockout power. He does have some technical skill as well. Obviously, we don't always see that because most of the time he does get these huge TKO or knockout wins, and that's what's going to happen on a Saturday night of Jimi Manuwa. I like him as a fighter. He is a top 10 caliber opponent and everything like that. He beats pretty good caliber opponents and whatnot. John Blachowicz coming off that win over him, but he does lose to top guys. We saw that against Alexander Gustafsson. And Anthony Rumble Johnson is a top guy. He will knock Jimi Manuwa out. He knocks out anybody not named Phil Davis, John Jones, or Daniel Cormier currently. And so Rumble knockout, that's the way to go in this fight. Moving on, we have the co-main event of the evening. We have Frank Mir taking on Andrei Arlovski. And I said this on this past week's edition of MMA Junior Radio. I'm not too sure if this is 2005 or 2015, but Arlovski versus Mir, a pivotal heavyweight matchup that could determine who's in title contention and whatnot. I can't believe this is 2015. But anyways, Daniel, the matchup, who do you like?
Well, it's funny you say that, Nick, because I believe they were originally supposed to meet in 2005. But here we are, 2015, and you know what? It's a great fight because Andrei Arlovski, a lot of people were talking about his career resurgence, but we were saying stuff like, okay, he's on this 7-fight win streak, but he hasn't fought the top 5 guys. He goes in there against Travis Brown as a plus 350 underdog, and not only does he get the win, he finishes him in the first round, and one doesn't simply finish Travis Brown in the first round. The UFC heavyweight champion, Fabricio Werdum, he went all 5 with Travis Brown. So, I mean, Andrei Arlovski, you got to give him credit where credit's due. Now, on the flip side, obviously Frank Mir, he's also on a career resurgence. His last 2 fights, he's won inside the distance as well via knockout. But the level of competition they've been facing, I would say that Travis Brown is better than any of the guys that Frank Mir has beat. MMA math doesn't mean anything, and one punch at heavyweight could change the fight. But I think the focus and the mental fortitude of Andrei Arlovski is going to be the difference here, and I'm favoring him to get the victory at UFC 191.
Paulo, what about you? Andrei the Pitbull Arlovski or Frank Mir?
Oh, this is such a tough fight to call. And yeah, Daniel said they were supposed to fight, but that was during I think that was during when Frank Mir injured himself from a motorcycle accident, so it never really happened. And Arlovski had to fight a couple of cans and knock them all out in succession. Yeah, I might lean on Arlovski here. This is a hard pick. I'm just gonna say it right now. This isn't a logical pick for me. I really just enjoy Arlovski's comeback story. Yeah, I know Frank Mir's won 2 in a row, but he beat Todd Duffy and was a Bigfoot Silva. I mean, I would take Travis Brown, Brendan Schaub, and Bigfoot Silva over those other 2 guys that Frank Mir just beat. So I'm gonna go with, and like Daniel said, he looks like he's more driven. And he's the better striker overall. Frank Mir probably has the chin advantage, but this is heavyweights. So I'm gonna go with Andrei Arlovski here.
Yeah, I like Andrei Arlovski with you, like you guys do as well. This guy is just on a different level than Frank Mir at this point. Yes, Frank Mir has improved his boxing. We saw that he knocks out Todd Duffy, Bigfoot Silva. Big deal. Todd Duffy left his chin open like the worst you could leave your chin open. He wailed his punches. He looked bad in that fight. And a skilled heavyweight fighter beats Frank Mir. Bigfoot Silva was a skilled heavyweight. He was a top 5 fighter like not even 2 or 3 years ago. But his chin is gone, so that's why Frank Mir knocks him out. Andrei Arlovski has always been known to have this suspect chin, but it'll be good enough to hold up any like Frank Mir punches or whatnot, unless Frank Mir lands like a big haymaker or whatever. But Andrei Arlovski has enough head movement, unlike Todd Duffy, to avoid those haymakers and get the job done, probably inside the distance. It's a heavy bout. These heavyweights screw me over all the time, so chances are Frank Mir gets it done. But Andrei Arlovski is the most logical pick, and I like him inside the distance, inside the first round even, by TKO. All right, moving on, the main event of the evening, a rematch of one of the best flyweight title fights there's been in UFC. Demetrious Johnson versus John Dodson for the 125-pound UFC belt. Daniel, who'd you like here, Johnson to retain or Dodson to gain?
And still, I think that Demetrious Johnson is going to go out there, and not only is he going to beat John Dodson at every single area of the game, I think he's going to be the first man in UFC history to finish John Dodson. I think that, the first time they fought, a lot of people try to act like it might have been controversial or it was super close or this or that. Look, even though John Dodson dropped Demetrious Johnson, he still lost 4 minutes and 59 seconds of those rounds. So, I mean, Demetrious Johnson was the one pushing forward, cutting off the ring, making him fight. And this time, I think he's got him figured out, and he's going to get the finish.
And Paulo, Johnson to end still, or Dodson to hear Bruce Buffer yell and new.
And no, and still. You know what? John Dodson, I just have to say, man, it's hard to cheer against this guy right now. He just became a new dad, and if you're following the Embedded series, he was running through the hospital in there and trying to get to his wife who was in labor. And the fact that he's half Filipino, I'm Filipino, so you know what? From a heart pick, I'm really cheering for Dodson here. So, but as a betting man, I'm with Demetrious Johnson all the way. In fact, I have a lot of units on Demetrious Johnson that I had to hedge John Dodson by knockout, which I managed to catch at plus 700. That number keeps on going down now. So if you're confident John Dodson is going to knock out Demetrious Johnson, you better put your money in on that now before it drops. But no, I just don't see it. The thing is, Robin Black gave a very, very good breakdown on the John Dodson-Demetrious Johnson fight. Even when John Dodson was knocking down Demetrious Johnson, he just kept coming. Demetrious Johnson just kept coming. He didn't care he was getting knocked down. And eventually he broke John Dodson. John Dodson quit in round 5, and Demetrious Johnson almost finished him. He had him pinned against the cage in a clinch and was giving him elbows. I mean uppercuts. And you know what? If that fight had gone longer, I think Demetrious Johnson could have finished John Dodson. So the pick is Demetrious Johnson. But if John Dodson manages to pull off this big upset, I won't be too upset.
Now, anyone who is confident in John Dodson by knockout is just a complete fool. Demetrious Johnson, I'll say right now, he is either the best or the second best fighter on this planet. He is so skillful. He has so many skills. He's so technical. He's so quick. He has such great cardio. He will beat John Dodson, and like Daniel, he will stop him in the later rounds. I got Demetrious Johnson by submission, round 4, round 5. John Dodson, of course, has good cardio. You have to have great cardio to be a top 5 flyweight. So of course he does. But Demetrious Johnson has the best cardio ever. He will just outwork John Dodson. And John Dodson, the reason I'm fading him so hard, before he fought Zach Makovsky, I was thinking this will be a close fight. Johnson will probably win decision, 48-47, whatever. But now I'm thinking either he wins by submission or he wins 50-45, 50-44, who knows. And the reason for that is because John Dodson looked awful against Zach Makovsky. Chances are most of that is because he was coming off the big layoff and whatnot with his knee injury and all that, tore a ligament in his knee. I believe it's an ACL. But you gotta base your picks off what you see. And I saw a bad John Dodson on May 23rd. And so you gotta say Demetrious Johnson versus like the number 1 guy who should not be number 1 because he lost to Zach Makovsky. I'm picking Johnson in this matchup, and I like him by submission. All right, before we get to our counter moves, teams, Daniel, Paulo, anything else you want to talk about? Any other preliminary fight you want to talk about? Anything else, Daniel?
You know, I just want to say overall, I'm really stoked for this card. You know, a lot of people have been complaining and this or that. I really don't get the negativity. You know, with Demetrious Johnson, we're looking at one of the top pound-for-pound fighters on the planet. So I couldn't be more stoked to go watch him defend his title. Plus, you got a great heavyweight fight, a great light heavyweight fight. You got a potential fight of the year on the prelims. I'm stoked for UFC 191.
And Paulo, before we get to our counter move teams, anything else to add?
You know what? I'm a big fan of the International Tough Show, so I'm gonna give a shout out to the debut, to the opening fight. We got Nazareno Milagre and what's it called? Eric Silva. Not that Eric Silva. This another Eric Silva, which is funny because this Eric Silva's nickname is also Indio, and that's also Eric Silva's nickname, so it can get any more confusing. But I think this is gonna be an underrated fight, man. I think these guys, when I watch them on the show, they're freaking killers. I was actually scared watching either of them because I'm like, I don't want to meet those guys in the street. They're going to eat me alive. So they're going to... Joaquim? Oh, I thought he was named Eric Silva. Never mind. His name was Joaquim, actually. But yeah. Those guys are going to bring on a good show. So don't sleep on those guys.
Now, I was going to say, I'm picking Joaquim Silva in this matchup, and I was going to say, well, I'm going to change my pick because so much for the love fest for Eric Silva, fade him all day, but doesn't look like I got to fade Joaquim Silva here, and I'm sticking with that pick. All right, let's get to our counter move teams. Daniel, why don't you list out your 5 fighters you plan on getting to either a knockout, submission, or most points by decision on your counter move team?
All right, well, I got Demetrious Johnson, John Lineker, Paul Felder, and then I had to fill up the space because those guys cost so much, so I got Frank Mir and Raquel Pennington to close it out.
Paulo, what about you? What's your team?
Okay, you know what? Hold on. I got to correct myself. I was thinking about a different fighter when I was like, this Silva guy. Joaquim Silva. This is the guy, I think in a previous show, I was like, Neto BJJ. This is the other, he's a great fighter too. He's a really good BJJ fighter. So now this changes everything, man. I might even put some money on Nazareno here. But okay, counter move. I got Frank Mir. I got who else I got? I got Frank Mir. I got Clay Collard. I got Anthony Johnson. I got Paul Felder, and I got
Raquel?
No, not Raquel. Oh, wait, I changed my team. No, I got the Johnsons, actually. Anthony Johnson and Demetrious Johnson, Frank Mir, Raquel Pennington, Clay Collard. Yeah, that's my team.
I was about to pull up the music that goes like doo-doo, like the Jeopardy music or something like that. While
you should do that, man. Seriously. Yeah, I didn't know I made 2 entirely different teams. I rarely ever do this, but yeah, I made 2 entirely different teams.
All right, so here is my counter-move team. I got Anthony Rumble Johnson to knock out Jimi Manuwa. I got John Lineker to knock out Francisco Rivera. I got Corey Anderson because he was a dog, and I'm picking him to win, but not too confident he's going to get a bunch of points. I got a Thiago Trader, again, an underdog. I'm picking him to win. Not sure if he wins inside the distance or not. And I got Paul Felder by spinning whatever on Ross Pearson. All right, I think that wraps up this show. So Daniel, let us know where we can find you on social media. Obviously, with Best Fight Picks, let us know where we can find that, your website, and anything else you got to plug, do so now.
Yeah, obviously find me at bestfightpicks.com. We got all the picks there, the podcast there, everything. So bestfightpicks.com, at bestfightpicks on Twitter, and obviously you know my show Half the Battle. Tonight, later on, we got my man Nick Baldwin plus Adam Martin, and then this Tuesday, I'm going to reveal it right now. I'm going to have the UFC's first ever Afghani fighter join me live on Half the Battle. I'm talking about CR Bahardurzada. I know a lot of you guys are wondering where he's been, and he's going to tell me live on Half the Battle this Tuesday, so make sure you tune in.
Breaking news, folks, and Paulo, plug anything you need. Obviously, you write for 3 websites now, Sportsnet, the biggest website of all time, and anything else you need to plug, social media, whatnot, do so now.
Yeah, so you can find me at GoPauloMMA. You can check out a lot of my articles from at Today's Knockout, at Vendetta Fighter, and most recently at Roger Sportsnet or at Sportsnet. Yeah, you know, and yeah, join the Facebook group, the largest UFC group on Facebook, and I think it's getting a little bit better now. You know, we're getting rid of all those trolls, all those haters, all those negative people on there. So it's definitely trying to get a little bit more discussions. And we have a contest in Tapology. You get a $100 UFC gift card if you win the Tapology contest. All you got to do is score the most points throughout the season. And right now we're rolling through the winter season, so this runs until January, until the Super Bowl card. So if you're really confident about your UFC knowledge, join the group and play the Tapology contest.
All right, and as always, you can find me on Twitter at NickUFC. Check out my website, MMAjunior.co. We'll have pre-fight, post-fight coverage of UFC 191, Johnson versus Dodson. Staff predictions, check them out. I give all my predictions, top to bottom, whatnot. Did I mention my podcast? I'm not too sure if I did already. Losing my mind, maybe. But MMA Junior Radio, I hosted with John King. He made his return after 7 episodes away on this past weekend's edition. We had Kieran Nee and Matthew Hanlon. And 2 guys, you have no idea who they are. That's okay, though. They are 2 web developers, and they focus on apps and whatnot. And their latest project is an MMA app called MMA Manager. And so I had them on to talk about that, their game, of course. And we have a contest going on in MMA Junior, our first ever contest. You can win. I know it's pocket money, so if you're really dying to play this game and whatnot, go buy it. But I prefer if you enter this contest. We are giving away 5 free copies of MMA Manager. It ends next week, September 9th, next Wednesday. All you got to do, go to my website. It's always at the top. It's a sticky post. It says win a free copy of MMA Manager for iOS. Click on there. It'll tell you exactly how to enter. So all you got to do, I'll tell you now, if you can't find it or not, all you got to do, go on Twitter, follow at MMA Manager _game and MMA Junior _ on Twitter. Tweet, I want to win a free copy of MMA Manager, and then tag both at MMA Manager _game and MMA Junior _, and you're entered. So you're put in a draw, and next week I'll draw 5 winners, and they'll be given codes to get this game for free. So I think that's it. MMA Junior, obviously I'm writing for MMA Suck as well. So check out all my stuff there, writing new posts and whatnot every week. And I think that's about it. So with that, enjoy the fights.